The Growing Money with Sean Trace podcast. Zombie Finances, Prepping for Life's Emergencies with Teddy Nguyen.
Well, welcome everyone back to the Sean Trace Show. I've got an awesome repeat guest. Can you introduce yourself real quick so people who are tuning in for the first time can know who you are?
Hey everyone. My name is Teddy. I am a money coach, and I help people overcome their overspending habits, primarily through the lens of psychology. And the whole idea is that once you get your money in order, take control of your spending, take control of your saving, then you can really improve all areas of your life. Be your best self at home with your family and also at work. So
I love it. Love it. Well, brother, I invited you back on because it is October and we were brainstorming a little bit, and it is the month of Halloween. And who doesn't love a good scary movie or, kind of getting in that fun Halloween spirit? Now, in my house, one of the things we love, and as a teacher, one of the things that I love is I love talking about zombies, right? So let me explain. Because say I'm going to teach a student creative writing, and I'm going to say, okay, I'm starting in my house and I need to go rescue my family. They are in the building next door. Okay, so I press the elevator, I go down, walk across the street, press the elevator, go up. Hey guys, ready to go home? Down, back over. Not really a good story. Not really fun, but that's kind of what every day is like. How do you want to make it a little bit bigger, a little bit wilder? Add the power being out. So I have to walk across the street and climb the stairs to the building. It's still nothing crazy, but it's a higher degree of challenge. Now let's put zombies in both buildings. Now we've got a fun, interesting plot, and it's challenging. And for me, I have loved zombie movies because it's the everyday little things that become difficult. One of the most famous TV shows is The Walking Dead, and for zombies, and it's a really it's a core film in the genre, TV show in the genre. And these people are faced with big challenges. Train to Busan, also probably one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. Again, faced with really interesting challenges. Now, one of the reasons that it is challenging is because when you're in a zombie world, little things shift. One of the basic things is like this morning, my daughter woke up and her eye was swollen. Okay. And I was like, wow, what's going on? So we ran up the street to the optometrist, went in and said, hey, doc, what's going on? She's like, it looks like it's the beginning of pink eye. Let's get on and treat it. Here's your medicine. Here are the eye drops. Do some eye drops for a couple days and you'll be okay. It's really simple. In a zombie world, kids get sick, things get much, much, much more dangerous, much faster. And little things become big challenges in the zombie world, because you don't have access to the things that you used to have. And that's one of the things that's always interesting for me. And why I want to bring it up is because it accentuates the challenges of needs versus wants. But I want to hear you and your take on the zombie genre before we dive into that.
Oh my goodness. My first experience with horror movies was not good. I was maybe 11 or 12. My dad took me to see I Am Legend. Oh. And it's PG-13. For a kid, it was scary. I was terrified. I have zero idea why he took us there. But we were watching it, just all these jump scares, this apocalyptic world. And after watching that movie, I was afraid to go to the bathroom thinking that there'd be a zombie sticking out of the toilet, or just zombies climbing up my window and screaming. I don't know why. I don't even know if it was actual scene in there, but for some reason I remember there was a zombie playing golf in there. I don't know how accurate that was, but this is just my little, 12-year-old
that's a different
brain.
Movie. That's a Zombieland. It was Bill Murray dressed as a zombie playing golf. Is there one in I Am Legend too?
I don't know. I actually don't think there was, but for some reason, the thing that scarred me is Will Smith is going around this house with his flashlight, and then he just shines it on the zombie, and I think it was a half cut zombie. I haven't seen the film in forever, so this could be totally inaccurate.
Yeah.
But it was just this crazy jump scare of like, this thing is there. And then that messed me up pretty bad. And I was like, do not bring a horror movie near me. In terms of zombies, I was playing like Plants vs. Zombies, just like really kid-friendly type zombies, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of like real world, like real apocalyptic zombie end of the world stuff, oh my goodness, count me out. Man, yeah, I don't take horror movies super well. But there was a season, 2019 or so, we were watching some horror movies like Conjuring, It, Bird Box, if you want to put it in horror. And it was.
I can handle zombies, but the Conjuring, no way, man. No way. I'm toast. See, one of the things that I like about zombie movies too is because, you get me into the supernatural stuff, like something emerges out of the ether. I'm like, nah, I'm good. But the zombies, it's like, what I've always loved about zombies is that the zombie movies take us back to almost like a primordial stage. Like, here's the crazy thing. Like, when I go out, unless I'm going out somewhere in Alaska or the northern part of Australia, there's not much hunting me. I am pretty much top of the food chain, and I can deal with grumpy people, challenges in traffic, but I don't have to worry about being hunted. Humans used to. Used to be that there were, you're out in African savanna and lions were like, you are on the menu, or a giant leopard. And it's like, and we've gotten this feeling of safety. And in that safety, you can see people do different things. And like one of the things that I, this is kind of like an interesting thing. I deal with food allergies. And when I try to find a specialist in Vietnam for food allergies, my wife looks at me and she's like, yeah, you're not going to find that. I was like, why? She's like, that's first world problems. Like, people here are worried about getting enough food. And she's like, when people have food allergies, it's just not as common. And I didn't think about that. And it's like, and not, developing country versus first world problems, but thinking about like certain situations and in zombie movies, when you're in survival, the things that you have to think about are like, needs, true needs, and this is something right over here. I'm gonna admit to people, I try to be savvy with what I buy. And I'm charting all of my expenses and I'm being careful. But I bought a beanbag chair. Our old beanbag chair was beat up, worn out, and I didn't check it before the dimensions before it came, when centimeters and inches, conversion, everything. It's huge. It was probably not the best buy. Now, everyone has loved it. It's become the favorite chair in the house in the last 4 days. So I think it will get its use. It will make its money back. But if I was in the zombie world and zombie apocalypse, type of things like that, wants are kind of out the window. I was watching an episode of The Walking Dead last night, which is actually awesome. The new series, the book of Daryl Dixon, my friend is in that. She's my old acting teacher, and she had the best death in The Walking Dead I've ever seen. She took a flare gun to the neck, and I was just like, yes! And she did a great dying scene. I'm absolutely in love with it. Great friend of mine, go watch episode 2 of The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon. It's phenomenal. But it's interesting because in this episode, people are focusing on needs and wants. And the people are not going and out and doing crazy things. There's a scene in this where Carol is playing with a small music box. And like, she hasn't seen a music box in years because it hasn't been a necessity. Like, it is something that is absolutely excessive in that world. And we're not existing in zombie world, but these lessons are good to remember. And that's one of the things that I did this exercise with my daughter recently, where I gave her a checklist. And it was like, all right, zombies are outside. What are you have a backpack. What are the 10 things that you're putting in your backpack? Needs and wants. And she listed out all these things. And then she's like, I'm going to have my Nintendo in there. And I was like, need? Look at your list again. She's like, looked at her list. And I was like, what don't you have on there? You're like, well, I've got my Nintendo. I was like, I know. Okay, let's imagine that you can get power for it somewhere. And then she looked at her list and I was like, Daddy, I've got everything I need. I've got food, I've got water, I've got this and that. I was like, you don't have clothes. You're going to be fighting the zombies naked. Oh my goodness, I need clothes. And it was like, but when she thought about it, I was like, are you sure, you don't want to be going out against the zombies naked? She's like, no. And so I was like, so what are you going to take out? Are you taking out the food or the water? And she's like, no, I need to have food and water. I guess I have to take out my Nintendo. And I was like, it's a want then, right? And it was able to frame it in a much better way. Love your perspective on that, brother.
Yeah, like the thing when it comes to needs and wants, especially when people are in seasons of abundance, where they have good, they get a bonus, they're making good money, and then that gets blurred really quickly. Like, oh, I can't live my life without, in the case for your daughter, a toy. Or the beanbag chair or whatever. And like, and I actually experienced this relatively recently, where like our emergency fund went low, and we're like, oh no, like we don't have the cushion that we used to. And so trimming out a lot of stuff, like, oh, I don't need to be eating out even a $4 lunch. Like I can pack something that I already have at home, or a lot of clothes. When I go to the thrift store, a lot of the deals, I'm like, I need clothes, right? Everyone needs clothes, but do I really? Like I can go without buying a new set of clothes. And yeah, this whole idea of when the constraint is really on, those needs and wants are very clear, right? Kind of like you were saying, when the zombies are outside your door and you're like, oh shoot, what the heck do I really need? The necessities. But yeah, if you're like, oh, the zombies got 3 days to get to us, and they're not walking too fast. So yeah, different things like that. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I'm gonna take my extra toothbrush. I'm gonna take my hair gel. I'm gonna take my I don't know, my camera equipment and vlog this.
Right.
Or whatever. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, and you're spot on. One of the things too is like, and I know we're talking zombies and we're going to come back and forth to this topic, but like right now, I grew up in the East Coast or western part of North Carolina, which my old hometown right now is absolutely destroyed. My cousins are talking about everything flooded. Roads where I used to go, my favorite place to go when I was a kid to go hiking was at this place called Chimney Rock. Chimney Rock, the town that is right next to Chimney Rock, is gone. Like what was this little creek became a river that was 100 feet across, and all of the buildings are gone. And it's interesting because first of all, the outpouring of support, the community going out and doing things to help these people is amazing. But my cousin lost her house in the last hurricane. It's gone. It was completely demolished. They went back, anything that was salvageable, they put into storage, but they're without a house. Luckily, I know her, and I know that she's prepared financially. I know that she has stuff set aside, and I know that she's going to be okay. But for people who haven't put things aside, who haven't sat there, and you don't know, we're talking zombies, but in real life, it could be a loss of a job. It could be an unexpected illness. It could be any number of things that come and suddenly slam you. Or like right now, what part of the world is dealing with, you get these natural disasters. Whether it's a wildfire in California, an earthquake somewhere else, a hurricane, a tornado, these things happen. And you don't know when and where.
In a lot of ways, having just some level of protection for that stuff absolutely can happen. Maybe it's not a natural disaster. It could be your house burns down, or someone robs it, or being able to be protected, whether it's through insurance or through emergency funds, and just a plan B, having some kind of contingency plan. May not be perfect, may not be a lavish lifestyle, but having some, like, one of the things in like emergency prep is that we want to make sure we have like a getaway bag, right?
Yeah.
With a phone, some cash, whatever it is, where you have to up and leave right away. And that translates a lot, not necessarily just physically with that bag, but financially with an emergency fund. Mentally, just being prepared does wonders, because no one ever thinks it's going to happen to them until it does.
Yeah. One of the things too that I remember, and it's thinking about stuff that, again, this mentality of it's never going to happen to me. I remember I was working on this movie. I actually got to work my career in film, and I got to, one of the first films that I got to work on that was a big film was I got to work on Angels and Demons with Ron Howard and Tom Hanks. Absolutely awesome human beings. Cool movie, fun to work on. And when we finished the movie, it's traditional for people to get a wrap gift. The production gave us something. I've still got the hat outside. I think my mom has the old hoodie that they gave us. But then, everyone's like, oh, super excited. What's Tom going to give us? Tom always gives everyone on the crew something. And we got this packet, right? And when I opened it, I was like, what the heck? And it was first of all, it was an attachment for your cell phone, so that to have like an old school phone handle. So you'd plug it in and it was like an old school phone handle, and everyone's like, what in the world? But Tom was always using that whenever he was on a cell phone. He kept his phone away from his head, didn't like having the phone close to his head. And I used it a little bit. But there was a second gift that was really interesting, and I thought it was stupid. It was an automatic hand pump radio, flashlight, device. It was a little bit everything all in one, and I think it had an outlet so you could charge your cell phone and stuff. You just, if you pump the crank, you could charge a device, you could charge the machine, and it had radio. And I forgot about it. I was like, you know what, not my thing, and I left it, gave it to my mom. Okay, a couple years ago, my family lives in the Napa Valley, and absolutely catastrophic fires swept through the Napa Valley and destroyed part of this one town near my family, destroyed part of another town. Two different fires that were both extremely awful, destroyed huge areas of land and structures. My mom's house was okay, but they were without power for, I believe, 10 days. 10 days without electricity. And no one had any idea of what was happening. People's cell phones were running out of charge, and no one had any way to charge it. And my mom was a source of information for everyone in her community. Why? Because she had that hand crank radio. She was getting updates. She was able to get things that she was listening to it, cranked it every day. At night, she had power. And it was this little thing that was just an absolute side note to my life, became an absolute fundamental thing in her being safe in this natural disaster.
Yeah, like when you're walking through that story, it reminds me, here in Texas, we very rarely get cold winters, or at least our winters aren't that bad. And it seems like there's 1 week out of each year that the weather gets so cold. Well, a few years ago, it was like 2020 or 21, something like that. No one was prepared for it to hit record low temperatures. And it took out the power because everyone is like running their heat, and then a lot of houses were without power for days, and some people had lost their lives just from how cold it was. The roads weren't prepped very well because we're not used to those types of weather occurrences. And after that moment, we were blessed. We had food in the house and all this stuff, but we didn't have any emergency prep, nothing. Like if we were out of power, once our phones die, we had nothing other than yelling across the street and asking if everyone's okay. And after that moment, we were like, we don't want to be in a position like that again, because what if it's worse, right? And so we went to Costco. It's like a warehouse type grocery, and we just got a whole bunch of food, canned meats, beans, like all this emergency prep stuff, thinking, okay, what if this happens again? We're prepared. Next year, didn't happen. The next year, didn't happen. And we're like, we have this whole thing of food that's just sitting here. We just wasted this money. And I was really thinking, that money wasn't wasted, right? That money sitting there in the form of food or water and all this stuff is insurance for us to be okay if that does happen. And whenever I was checking through it a few months ago, I'm like, dang, all this food is expired now. Like we bought this food and never ate it, but knowing that we had it gave us peace of mind. Yeah. And I'd much rather waste that food than to be in a position where we are left without it. And very much similar with money stuff, both emergency fund, insurance, wills, anything like that, where, having $10,000, $15,000 sitting in a bank account is not fancy. There's no like interest that's really earning a lot for you. Like maybe you can buy certain investments with it and make so much more money. But in the case that you're out of work, that fat stack of cash is looking pretty helpful at that point.
Yep.
And just man, the parallels with real world emergency prep, whether it's doomsday, zombie apocalypse prep, or like you said, when in a situation like that, some of those small needs that are like first world problems become emergencies. Like a small cut can turn into infection and turn to sepsis. And that can look like when people don't even have $1,000 in their emergency fund. If a tire goes out on the highway, how can you replace it? And how can you afford to get your car towed? And some people just have to leave their car on the side of the road, or they're just out work and all this stuff. And so even those minor inconveniences can become emergencies. But having even a little bit of cash, $1,000 US dollars or anything like that.
For sure, right? I was driving out in the countryside, and the interesting thing is Vietnam has been for a long time. Now it's shifting. They use a lot of QR codes and bank transfers, but for a long time, everything here was cash. And I remember once I was driving to the beach, and I had been used to card. Everything was cards. You know, in the US, I use a card here, I use a card there. And I forgot to get out a certain amount of money for cash usage. And I got a flat tire. And I was like, pulled over. I was like, no problem. There's a guy who can fix it. Well, he would have if I had have had cash. And I ended up having to walk, about 5 miles to a place to get an ATM, and then walking 5 miles back. Luckily, someone was able to give me a ride back when I had cash. What an idiot I am to not think about that. But sometimes you don't think about it because you think, you know what? I'm not going to be the guy who gets that flat tire, but you are. And when you do, then you still have to deal with it. Now let's shift to, if you had an emergency bag, your emergency bag, what are some of the things that you're putting in there? For me, food, water. But for me, it's like I have to really think about food. It would be tough for me in a zombie apocalypse because I have food allergies. So I need to make sure that I can get my vegetables. I need to make sure that I can get beans. And I'd have to farm it, And so it's tricky to think about what you need to prepare. What are some of the things that you'd put in your bag?
Yeah, I think really basic one, like survival stuff, hand crank radio or some kind of hand crank flashlight. If I can get... For us out here in Texas, we can have firearms. And so having a firearm with us for protection, I think having like a water filter, like they make those like water filter survival straws. I think that would be extremely valuable and compact. Yeah. When it comes to food, man, I'm not sure what I can even fit in a bag, right? Like canned food gets really heavy. They have some of those foods where those military foods where you add water and it'll cook in the bag and stuff. But having, just some of those basic necessities, even just a pocket knife could be a lifesaver.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Oh man, one of my go-to would be my Leatherman. I have it always at the ready. That little mini tool is just so useful for everything.
Yeah, like sometimes I get so comfortable with all the space that we have, right? I have a place for my power drills. I have a place for scissors and shears and knives of different lengths and rope and all this stuff. But when it really comes down to it, that little multi-tool can get you so far.
Now, one of the things too, I want to pull this back into talking about like everyday finances. Both of you and I love Dave Ramsey and the baby steps. Step number 1 is your emergency fund. And while we might not always be prepping for doomsday and the zombie apocalypse, we can start to prep for basic life emergencies. And that's one of the reasons that Dave Ramsey says start off with your $1,000. That's your first step. your step one before you start going into other things is to save. Save 1,000, and then step two is to pay down debt. Step three is to get a larger emergency fund. But if zombies were coming, you would stock up on supplies. Now in real life emergencies, in real life, you need an emergency fund. And one of the things that they recommend is saving for 3 to 6 months of living. And when things go bad, whether it be job loss or medical bills, you'll be ready. Like the people that, started saving up for the zombie apocalypse. And there are people who do this. And this is an interesting thing. Like growing up in California, we have earthquakes. And I remember early on when I moved to California, they had signs on the walls, save up 10 days of food and supplies. And we did that. And we always would have, my mom and dad would always have the bottles of water, and we would always have extra food supplies and food stocks. And again, like what my mom said, she had that hand crank radio, and she had enough food for about a month in her house, set aside, ready to go. So when everything was down, when the stores weren't working, she was sitting fine. It wasn't convenient, but everything was okay. She had her, little propane or, butane little stove that she was able to use, and she was cooking there. And she was just like, a little bit bored, slowing things down, but it was okay. But if you don't have that, if you don't have your emergency fund, your 3 to 6 months of savings, then when something comes along, you can get hit. I remember that my wife and I had 2 different challenges in our life. One was when my mother-in-law got cancer. We actually had more of a savings then. We had an emergency fund, and we were able to absorb the hit that came. Luckily, healthcare is much cheaper here. But when we had my daughter, we didn't have enough saved, and we were in a very much a challenging place financially. And it took us a while to recover from that. Now, talk to me about emergency funds. What do you think people should be doing to prepare their emergency funds?
Yeah, I mean, really knowing the expense even of bare necessities to start off that emergency fund, and calculating that for 3 months is if you got stable income, maybe you're a dual income household. And if you're a single income, or if you work on commission where maybe job security isn't super great, 6 months probably would make more sense. And one thing I wanted to bring up too while you were talking was that the importance of, say, life insurance. Having adequate coverage for life insurance. I don't know how it works out in Vietnam, but in the States, you can get term life insurance, and it's fairly inexpensive. And if you can get 10 to 12 times your income in the event that, like, if I get in a car accident and I die, I know that my wife's going to get a fat stack of cash, and she won't even have to touch that. She can live just off the interest and stuff that it makes. And just having that peace of mind not only will financially protect you, like for the emergency fund, pay the medical bill or pay the co-pays and all that stuff, but it'll give you a little bit more mental freedom to just not be in this fight or flight. You can make decisions better, and for both the small and the large emergencies. I hope that answered the question.
No, that's great. Well, and there's 2 things that I want to point out. There's one great zombie movie called Cargo, right? And so one of the reasons, coming back to zombies again, one of the Cargo movie is probably one of the most heartbreaking zombie movies I've ever seen. Now, it is a father whose wife dies, and it's played by Martin Freeman, who played Bilbo in The Hobbit, great actor. And he's in Australia, and the zombie apocalypse hits, and he's got a newborn child, and he is trying to keep his child alive. Now, here's the thing. I want to segue and go back and forth with talking about how life insurance. Everyone thinks it's not going to happen to me. Everyone thinks, you know what? I'm okay. I'm the guy who's going to be this or that. But you don't know. Studying martial arts, being around MMA fighters, some of my friends are like professional UFC fighters. And one of the things that my friends told me, on any day, anyone can get knocked out. On any day, you can get the wrong timing, the wrong thing. You could be walking across the street and someone's looking at their phone while driving, and you've done everything right, and that's it. That's all she wrote. Now, in the movie Cargo, it's so great because he's got the baby, he puts her on his back, and he gets bit. He knows he's toast. So what does he do? He creates his thing. He rigs this stick in front of him and hangs a piece of flesh so he doesn't try to attack his daughter. He puts his daughter on his back, and then he puts this piece of meat in front of him, and he just walks toward the meat, of human flesh. And it was his life insurance policy for his kid. He knew he would keep walking. He knew he would be able to protect her even after he was gone. He set up something in the time he had before he died so that he would protect his daughter. And when he finally walked to a place where these people saw him and they killed the zombie he was, but then they were able to rescue his child. When we have a taboo about talking about life insurance because people, certainly Hollywood doesn't help. He took out a life insurance policy and then the person killed them. Or, it's like there's all these movies, but they bypass the fact that the reality is life insurance is a great thing because you are protecting the people you care about. It is this Superman choice that you recognize the reality that you might not always be there. And I think people that are in more high risk professions are a little bit more aware of that. A firefighter or a police officer, they've got that reality every day. But you know what? Like we were talking about, you could be the guy crossing the street and something goes wrong. You could be at a baseball game and a fly ball comes and hits you in the face. You don't know. You just don't know. But by having this, you're ready.
Oh,
sorry. No, go ahead. By having this, you're ready. Go for it.
So the thing I found really interesting about life insurance, and I noticed this a lot with my wife's family, really even a lot of immigrant Americans, that there's this idea that if we get life insurance, it's bad luck and we're going to die sooner.
Yep.
Like I understand the superstition behind it, but what if you die sooner? Okay, well, but they're protected. Like getting a life insurance policy is not going to tell something to happen to you, right?
Yeah.
It only protects you from things that will happen anyways. And my wife and I had quite a few arguments actually, which was surprising. You would think, oh, insurance, we're just having this conversation. But no, there's some deeply held beliefs that we were revealing that, we have the superstition that if we talk about death, it's going to happen sooner. Or if we talk about insurance, that is inviting death at our door. And man, that can't be further from the truth. It's needed conversations, just like having a conversation about leaving an estate, like writing a will. Like who's going to get the kids? Who's going to take care of all my property and all of this stuff? And they're hard conversations because the possibility is so real. Even with we joke about zombie apocalypse and whatever, but I mean, rewind 4 years ago, and wasn't a zombie apocalypse, but we were all the whole world was turned upside down, right? And those global phenomenon can absolutely happen. So, man, emergency prep, hard conversations. No one wants to think of doom and gloom, but man, so powerful, and to be prepared when that time comes.
Well, an insurance policy can look different than just actual insurance as well. And this is something that my wife and I were talking about. And one of the things that I want to push people to look at. Right now, I'm talking to my brother because he and I are both dealing with very much single streams of income. I actually have multiple streams of income, but I always have to be present and active in doing it. And I'm looking at diversifying into streams of income that can be passive, things that can just be working for me. But one of the things that I think that people need to look at is how can you develop multiple streams of income? How can you start looking at, okay, this falls apart. Well, we've got this over here that can be the thing that makes us money. It can be just simple things. Like for me, I'm trying to leverage the location that I'm in, the strengths that I have, and the network that I have to start a bag company. It's like mountain biking bags, and starting small. I know I have a niche, and I have an awesome producer here in Vietnam that I'm working with, and so something that I'm starting to kick up. Maybe it gets going, maybe it doesn't. But if I can start generating some type of income from that, and it can be something, that is additional revenue that is coming in. It might be that for you, it's that you have chickens and you've got extra eggs, and sharing them with the neighbors or selling them. I don't know what the legality of all that is, but looking into whatever it is, and it doesn't have to be, I know, and there are great YouTube videos out there about different income streams, whatever those might be, but they act as extra shields, and it's like in a zombie movie, there's never one line of defense. You watch the people, there's fence number 1, and then there's fence number 2, and then there's fence number 3. And literally, the more different lines of defense that you can have, the better. And it's so much the same with multiple streams of income. Like, because you see it right now. I've been watching on LinkedIn, and it is a bloodbath right now, especially in the tech industry. Like, I've been seeing, and the job market is rough, and watching people, and the number of people that are interviewing and just absolutely getting ghosted, it's painful to watch. And it's painful because so many people, I'm seeing people posting, there was one guy that on LinkedIn, he was like, you know what? And he brought up mental health. He's like, guys, I don't want to talk about this. Maybe it's taboo on LinkedIn, but he's like, I don't know if I can keep going if this continues. Like, he's like, I don't know what my options are. I'm already, I've run out of my emergency funds. I am looking at moving back in with my parents. I've lost this and that. Car was repoed. And it's really sad. And I feel for that person. And I think that I'm not going to say he should have done this. Person might have done everything right, but you never know. And for me, when I look at that, I can't judge that person. I'm just going to say, okay, what happens if that happens to me? What are some extra ways that I can prepare? What are the extra things that I can do so that if things do go bad, I've got some type of backup? Like, defense 1, fall back to the second fort, fall back to the third fort, whatever that might be, that you have those layers of protection there.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to bring up, this idea of being diversified, having your eggs not all in one basket. And I was really reflecting on, I think it happened about a year ago or a little over a year ago, and it reminded me of the importance of relationships and having adequate number of people in your life who support you. So I'm out here in Texas. There's a city pretty close by, like 30 minutes down the road from where I'm at, called Allen, Texas. And we get an alert on our phone that there's a shooting at a mall, like mass shooting. This guy's just like assault rifle, just like shooting people down. I'm like, this is happening 30 minutes, 45 minutes from me. And man, all the videos ended up on TikTok and all this stuff. And I was like, I saw more than I should have seen, but those were the realities of things that could happen. And the reason why I bring it up is because there was this one family in particular. I was reading up on them. Both parents died. And I think one of the brothers died, and he was just a kid by himself. Wow. He was orphaned after an event, and thinking, what if that's my kid, right? Yeah. What if something happens to both my wife and I, car accident, whatever it is, like, do we have the relationships to take care of the things that we leave behind, our kids? And I mean, I don't know much more. I know keeping that private is super important. So it's none of my business anyways if he had family to go to. But just thinking, man, diversifying all aspects of our life, making sure we have adequate relationships that we're maintaining, different streams of income, different contingency plans if things don't work out, investments, or if the stock market crashes, do we have money in a bank account that's staying safe from the market? Or if this bank collapsed, do I have it in another safer bank? And whatever, that idea of all our eggs split up so that if one of those baskets falls, we still have plenty to be okay in so many dimensions of our life. So
yeah. I wasn't even thinking about that, this angle. And it's, if we're coming back to the zombie movie theme, it's so true. In the most important thing in everything in the zombie movies is always who's your crew? Who are your ride or die friends? Who are the group of people? Because like, I was joking with some of my students the other day. They're like, what happens with zombies dive into the room? And I was like, well, you know what? I know I'm going to make it. They're like, how do you know? Because I'm like, I'm going to grab you and throw you toward the zombie. And then I'm going to run and grab you and throw you to the zombie. And we laugh about that. But there are people like that. There are the people that will just toss you aside. But then there are the people I can't remember his name. He's the main actor. He's a Korean actor, and he's in the Train to Busan. And he's this big, strong guy. And he always plays this big, tough, strong guy in all the Korean movies. He's so cool. And I can't remember his name, but he's awesome. And his character in the movie, when things hit the fan, he's got a wife who's pregnant, and his whole thing is he's got to keep her safe. And he is not afraid to throw down. And he keeps stepping in when people are hurt. He's sitting there, and he just is the guy that you can go to. He's that guy. I mean, he wraps newspapers or magazines around his arm, tapes them up, and then he's just like, all right, let's go. You need the people that are willing to step up for you. I've seen this. One of the things too that I've loved living in Vietnam is to see the concept of community. Like, when my wife's family has a problem, the other side is people are always involved in your stuff. And it can be a little bit much at times. It's like, okay, cousin of a cousin will be like giving you advice, and that's great. But the truth is, whenever there is a challenge, there is always someone who will step up to help out. That network is going to be there. And they're always there to help out and to really stand by you. And I think that having that group of people, and having the people, and not just in survival, but the people that elevate you, the people that lift you up. If you have this idea, you know what? I'm going to start. Yesterday, my brother and I have a friend that is quite successful with making knives. He's a great brand. And I sent him a message. I'm starting up this bag company with my brother. I would love to send you one of the products that I'm mocking up. I want your feedback. I want you to beat it up. I want you to take it out. I want you to destroy this thing and tell me what's good about it and what we can fix. And he was like, done. And so as soon as I get my first batch in, I'm sending one to him. And it wasn't like, dude, why are you doing that, man? Why are you making this company? That's not a smart idea. He was like, you guys can do this. That is a great idea. You need a great product. And he sent me some examples. I would recommend looking at these companies. They're doing it right. And I was like, all right, man. It's because I was surrounded by someone who believed that what I wanted to achieve is possible, who saw my vision and said, you can have that. And I'm going to raise you to here. Being around these people is so important. And, these are the people that when things go bad, they are there. And when things are good, they tell you that you can be even better. So I'm all about that.
Yeah, I love that. Ever since getting into this whole business space, I started off in isolation. Like, I can do this by myself with the power of the internet and my own willpower. I'll have a successful business, or I'll have successful finances, or whatever it is. And very quickly, I learned that no one was pushing me. No one was challenging me, like you said, but also like no one was there in those low points. Yeah. And having those real relationships, deep relationships where people genuinely care about well-being is so powerful. And the one misconception that I grew up with was that the length of the relationship, it signifies the importance of it, or the quality of the relationship. And thinking I've been holding on to, friendships from my childhood, or, 5-year, 10-year relationships just for the sake we've known each other for that long, even though we don't deeply know each other. And I realized that going through my own journeys of addiction recovery, I meet some people And within 2 weeks, it feels like I've known them forever. And
100%.
they will come pick me up in the middle of the night if they need to. And just having those real rich relationships in our lives, man, that has so many impacts for just our mental well-being, financial well-being. I like that you brought up, like in Vietnam, the culture is very like communal versus in the States, it's very individualistic. And what I thought was funny is that on the negative side or the opposite side, there's also a lot of involvement where maybe it's not super needed. And the reason why I find that so funny is because going into my marriage, I didn't realize that was normal to me, that my cousin's cousin knows my business and they're giving me advice on all this stuff. And whenever I'm in a relationship and we're both, we lean more towards American culture, but I still have parts of that Vietnamese culture in my background. And so like they're speaking into our marriage in ways that's like culturally so different. But at the same time, man, we have the biggest parties, like 30, 40 people all the time because they prioritize that community. So positive and negatives of both, right? But I personally thought that was a really good thing you pointed out, because on this podcast, I'm literally realizing, oh, that's why they were so involved. It's not that they were necessarily wanting the gossip or anything, but there's this obligation and duty too.
There is that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like this obligation and duty to the family unit, which is also a pretty positive thing.
Granted, zombies aren't real, though they are probably one of the most realistic of all of the horror movies. But uncertainty is. Life throws curveballs, disasters, market crashes, personal emergencies. And what is the best defense? Planning ahead. If you can prepare for something as best you can, then when things get bad, you're ready for the unknown. And you won't get caught off guard when the world or your world turns upside down. And, I think if we can inspire people to do anything today, it's at least to start considering, what would I do if the zombies started storming the streets? What's important to you? What are your wants? What are your needs? And I mean, and I think it's not black or white. It's a spectrum. Is this going to be super important or not? And to everyone, it's different. The things that are really important for you are different. And I as much as I was slamming myself for that beanbag chair, I promise you, in 3 years, that's going to probably be used more than anything else that I've bought. It's going to get so much use. So it wasn't crazy expensive. It was way bigger than I thought it should be. But you know what? It's going to be something that will be well used. And pay attention to that, because those types of things are important as well. But also pay attention to preparing, thinking ahead, and starting to apply some of these to your life. And again, if you want to read some great books, start off with Dave Ramsey. He is phenomenal for this as well. Teddy, what are some of your final thoughts on this, brother?
Yeah, I mean, just having those hard conversations of what if, man, that is so crucial and scary. Absolutely validate anyone who's scared to have those conversations of what if I'm out of job? What if I do pass away? What if there's a medical emergency and I'm disabled? Having all the protections in place, being prepared, and not having to use it is so much more peaceful than living your life, enjoying the luxuries, and then not being ready whenever life happens to you. Because there's so many things. I think you all are getting the theme that we can only control so much in our life. Control ourselves, control our finances, control what protects us. But there's so much of life that we can't control.
100%.
And by preparing for everything we can and doing our best, it's not going to protect us from everything, but if it could protect us from 80% of what could happen, man, think about how much more peace you'll have in your relationships with yourself, and just being able to think more positively and optimistically about the future, and having as much control over the controllables in a way is giving you a level of certainty that no matter what happens, we'll be okay. And if we're not okay, it was already too bad that we couldn't have prepared otherwise.
Right.
And accepting that, that's changed how I approached my business, my life, my work. It's like I could get fired tomorrow. Absolutely. Something had happened and I'm ready for it. Right. Yeah. So this conversation of emergency preparedness, I thought it was a really fun twist to spooky season with zombies and all this stuff. So I really enjoyed our conversation and just the applicable real life scary stories that happen personally, the people around us, and being able to learn from those experiences so we don't have to make them ourselves. That's why we do this, right? Yep. Sean, I love the content you're putting out with your interviews, and same with like the shorts and the videos I put out, that someone has to talk about it. Even if it's scary, someone has to push past whatever shame and fear to have these discussions, because better to have them and be prepared for something you don't need than to not have them and your life be in shambles over something that was preventable.
Yeah. Well, you touched on one thing, and I want to circle back on that real fast before we finish up. And that's the dichotomy of control. And that's the dichotomy of control. Being there are things that we can control and things that we cannot. And if you can't sit there and waste all your time on this stuff you can't control, but the stuff that you can, you put your energy there and you work on it. And you do what you can there. And then the rest, you know what? You just got to let go. See where it goes. But if you've prepared, even if stuff's hitting the fan, you're going to sit a little bit better than you would have if you didn't.